Deep within the Indian Constitution, there's this incredible promise, a shield designed to protect the autonomy and culture of tribal communities. It's called the Sixth Schedule. But today we're asking a pretty tough question. What happens when that shield gets turned into a weapon against the very people it was meant to defend?
And believe me, this isn't just some hypothetical question. It's the lived reality for so many people under this provision. To really understand how a promise became a betrayal, we have to go back to the beginning. All right, so to really get our heads around what went wrong, we've got to first appreciate the original idea. And honestly, it was a really powerful, well-meaning concept. So, the Sixth Schedule set up these things called Autonomous District Councils, or ADCs for short. Now, you can think of them as these special local governments with a super specific mission to give tribal populations the power to govern themselves and protect their unique cultures and lands from outside interference. And look, this wasn't just some line in a legal document. It was a constitutional promise, a promise to protect their land, their culture, their whole way of life from outside pressures. A truly noble goal, right? And hey, this wasn't just for show. These councils were given some serious power. I mean, look at this. They were handed control over the things that matter most: land, forests, and all the money for local development. On paper, it's the perfect recipe for self-governance. But this is exactly where the beautiful theory and the messy reality start to go in completely opposite directions. Okay, so now we have to talk about the betrayal. This is where that noble story we just talked about takes a really sharp, pretty disturbing turn. I mean, what happens when that very shield, the thing that was meant to protect, becomes a wall to hide behind? What happens when that autonomy is used to exploit people from the inside? This is a direct quote from our source material, and wow, it does not pull any punches. It gets right to the absolute heart of the problem. The very institutions created to be protectors have, in way too many cases, turned into the predators. And really, this image just nails the transformation. What were supposed to be these democratic bodies serving the people, well, they've twisted into these personal fiefdoms. Public money, public resources, they're being treated like private property, all hidden away from any kind of scrutiny. So that's the big question, right? How? How does a system with such a clear, positive goal break down so badly? Let's dig into the nuts and bolts of this failure.
Okay, first things first, let's follow the money. We are talking about huge amounts of cash meant for development. So why is there this massive black hole when you try to find out where it all went?
And here we go. This is the real heart of the problem. The system's greatest strength, that autonomy, has been twisted into its absolute greatest weakness. It's now used as a shield to block any real financial oversight. State audits, they're often completely toothless, which means huge sums of money just vanish with zero public transparency.
All right, so let's put ourselves in their shoes. You're a citizen, you see your local funds being misused. What can you do? There's got to be a legal path to justice, right? Right?
Well, what you get is this bureaucratic nightmare. I mean, just look at this. It is a perfect circle of finger-pointing. The state government says, nope, that's under the ADC's jurisdiction. And the ADC points right back and says, that's the state's job. And the citizen, they're just trapped in the middle with absolutely nowhere to turn.
Okay, let's move on to the most valuable asset in these areas, land. How is the ADC's control over it being twisted for personal profit?
The methods are, sadly, depressingly simple. Council members can use their power over land registration to just illegally grab prime land for themselves or their families. Or they can arrange illegal land sales to outsiders, the very thing they're supposed to stop, usually in exchange for a nice, fat bribe.
You know, all of this leads to the one final, really big question. If there's so much evidence of this massive corruption, why in the world doesn't the state government just step in and clean house?
And the answer, as it so often is, comes down to politics. You see, the ruling parties at the state level often rely on alliances with powerful groups inside these ADCs to stay in power. If they crack down on the corruption, they risk losing that political support. And what that creates is this toxic culture of impunity, where everybody knows what's going on, but nobody has the political guts to stop it. Okay, so after breaking down just how deep this problem goes, it's really easy to feel, well, pretty hopeless. But the story doesn't have to end here. There is a path forward. We can reclaim that original promise. So, we've laid out the problem. It's clear.
The next obvious question is, what's the path forward? What can actually be done? What are the real, actionable solutions?
It all comes down to empowering the citizens. It starts with demanding constitutional amendments to force financial transparency. No more hiding the books. Next, we need independent watchdogs, like an ombudsman, with real power to investigate and punish corruption. Accountability also has to be built from the ground up, with village committees that can legally track how development money is being spent right in their own neighborhoods. And finally, you have public campaigns. They are so crucial for shining a bright light on these cases and building pressure for real change. You know, when you boil it all down, it comes to this. The sixth schedule was created to be a shield. The challenge now is to prove that accountability doesn't weaken autonomy, it actually makes it stronger. The system was born from a promise. The real question left for us is, what will the people demand it to become?